Hi, everybody.
Hello.
We just want to welcome you to our inaugural podcast from Pints, them being Irish Canadian,
And pasta.
me being Canadian Italian, right? Two best friends. We grew up together. My name is David Petramala.
Andy Corcoran.
Yeah, and what we want to do is we're all about dad topics that all of us go through every day. And one of the things we want to do in our inaugural session is talk about the Leafs and what happened this year in terms of their countless heartless disappointments. And it's going to be an exciting topic. We're going to have a laugh about it.
But
first, we start every podcast by making sure we enjoy ourselves. So what I did, being the Italian portion of this, every podcast, I'm going to introduce a new pasta. So today, what I've brought for us to eat on is Penne Rigate. So Penne Rigate, you can see this short pasta, very filling. See the way the edges are cut? That's to absorb the sauce. And what I did today is very simple, pasta and burro. So it's the rigate, boiled al dente, with some butter, olive oil, and some salt. Try it. Tell me what you think. Not bad, right? Now, the history of this is really out of southern Italy, where I'm from, Calabria, right? Testa dura, hard-headed. But the reason why is down there is a poorer part of the country. So they had to create meals that were filling, right? So pastas like butter and sauce that would fill because of the lack of access to meat and high proteins. So this is a traditional, simple meal that you would serve the kids, snack, lunch, or at dinner. So
simple, but so good.
Yes,
that's amazing.
I mean, let's enjoy. But this is only half the portion. The other portion is we don't want to go through a podcast without a good hearty drink. So it's his responsibility on every podcast to bring a new pint and introduce me, who really is an Italian. All I ever do is drink wine.
That's it.
Right?
That's it.
Introduce me and teach me to all the beer magic that you know and adore.
And as you can tell, I'm a professional beer drinker. So we will get to that in a minute.
So let's do that. Why don't we make our way to the man cave downstairs into your bar, introduce us to a pint, and let's start this podcast.
Looking forward to it.
All right. So I shared the pasta.
Welcome back.
And, I do feel bad because I mentioned the history, but the reality is it's a simple, light pasta. It always fills you up, just like our friendship.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. I got that one. So now...
Hold on. That's a dandy idea.
That's a dandy. Let me explain what a dandy idea is. So, David and Andrew, whenever we're sitting down with our family or our kids and we want to, stoke a lesson to them, we always say, that's a dandy idea. So when you hear us say that, you know where the history comes from. It's annoying our kids. Anyway, so now it's pint. So listen, I love this section because I'm not a big beer drinker. You know me, Peroni or maybe an Ultra, but I typically take the homemade wine, put it in the fridge, and like to drink it cold like a beer. But the great thing about us doing this podcast is every week you get to introduce me to something new. So
absolutely. Here
we are. Tell me what you brought us this week for our pint.
First of all, I'm going to start with one of the oldest beers of all time, since 1759, Guinness.
Nice.
This is one.
I told you, I've been to the Guinness plane. I flew into Ireland. Yeah, it was awesome. I had a great time.
It actually tastes better there than anywhere in the world.
I actually bought one of those bottle openers. Put it by the barbecue. Yeah, it's cool. It looks cool.
How come I didn't get one for Christmas?
I know. I mean, I didn't get it one.
Anyway, I chose this beer because I think it's because I have a bit of a Irish background as well. But Guinness is one of the most misunderstood beers in the world, I think. Everybody thinks it's too thick or too heavy. I think it's one of the most refreshing beers. If you ever get a chance, Dave, especially you, when you're out mowing your grass, come in, instead of grabbing a Coors Light or whatever you drink, grab a Guinness.
Water.
Even at room temperature, it is one of the most refreshing beers. And I've heard, and I can't guarantee this, but I'm pretty sure, I worked in alcohol for over 25 years, beverage alcohol. But I think it's either the same or less calories than a Coors Light, believe it or not.
Come on.
Yeah, it looks thing. But anyway.
You wouldn't think that when you look at an Irishman drinking the beer. Come on.
The original stout. That's why I drink it. Anyway, like I said before, in Dublin, that's the real beautiful stuff. But they've come up with a great invention around the world where they put a nitrogen pellet. And so as soon as air hits it, it actually makes it fresh, like it comes from a tap in Dublin. And it doesn't taste exactly the same, but it's pretty darn good. And let me show you the ritual of how to pour a Guinness here. And this is what I do anyway, because I like to get a really good head on the beer, is I pour it nice and fast.
Wow, that's cool. Usually that sort of spills over.
Nope. And then, because it's a perfect pint glass, right? So
nice.
You'll see that subtle, but in the meantime, have a sip.
I never have that. I always have it spilling everywhere. That's why I prefer wine.
The white, the white should be about a figure. This has been sitting for a while, so it kind of.
Okay, let's try this.
Right.
So Guinness, and this is no special Guinness. This is like the original.
No,
does Guinness have flavors?
They actually just came out.
Can I get a lime or lemon Guinness?
No. They just came out. I saw it today.
Sacrilegious.
I saw it today with a little bit of coffee on it.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah,
that's an Italian drink.
And there's a big trend now of low calorie. So they have I forget what it's called.
I like the coffee one. Yeah. Well, we're gonna have to look up that coffee one anyway. Try this.
Delicious.
Yeah, that is good. I love it. Very good. Great choice.
Okay, so we're not talking about dad bods or anything, even though ours are pretty stellar. But we want to talk about a little bit about the Leafs. So let's talk about the rituals, Dave. We've been fans. How long have we been fans of the Leafs?
So think about it. Since 1970. So we're like us in 1969 are the longest serving people in this generation.
69, 70, yeah.
Right? That have not seen the Leafs ever win a cup.
Yeah. So when we got into hockey, what do you say, grade 2, 3?
Yeah.
Daryl Sittler, Lennon McDonald, Harold Ballard was the owner.
Ian Turnbull,
Walt McKechnie, Mike Palmetier, all those guys.
Doug Favell, yeah, remember the mask, right?
Yeah, we used to table hockey and hockey cards.
Wayne Thomas.
I can still smell the gum, the hard gum in the hockey cards. And I have my mother, who passed away at 100, saved all my hockey cards. We'll have an episode about that because I got to bring up because we can
have a whole episode on cards. Do you remember my mom took them away from me and gave them back as Christmas gifts? Right, the cards I bought. But anyway, that'll be another.
God bless our moms. Anyway, so from the 70s, we just became diehard Leaf fans, and then in '93, when we thought we were cool and going through our teenage and early 20s, whatever. We thought we were going to win a cup. We had that great team with Doug Gilmour, Wendel Clark, Curtis Joseph, all those guys.
Man. It's so weird. That team never won a cup, but everyone talks about as if they were Stanley Cup champions because of how hard they played. The difference
with the talent they had and how they won on grit more than talent.
Yeah,
and I think, by the way, that wins every time. But that stupid call. From the ref, if we would have not got that
Fraser,
call,
he even admits it today. It was the wrong call. I know.
If we would have got to the final round, we would have beat Montreal hands down, guaranteed. But that's the start.
I blame my brother. Yeah. My brother decided to get married that year.
I know.
And his wedding and reception was on the same night they lost to them in Game 7. So I had to miss Game 7 for his freaking wedding.
I always
blame him.
I want my booster back.
Yeah, I know. I wish I'd get my booster back.
Poor Gabe. He's gone through this with us so long. But there's really the three of us, you and Johnny, our friend. Since '93, we took Die Hard to the next level. And we've been heartbroken just ever since.
Well, listen, it's to the point this year. I'll tell you a story. So last year, I wrote an article. When the Leafs lost last year against... it wasn't Florida. They lost in the first round to Boston. Mm-hmm. And remember, they came back Game 7. What's our luck? Goalie gets hurt. Siv goes back in. We lose in overtime. I was so heartbroken. I wrote, and I write articles all the time for work, but I wrote a blog that was just a personal blog on, the heartache of being a Leaf fan and the disappointment and the history of the disappointment. And I got this massive audience reading that article. So this year I thought, you know what? I'm going to write an article about my feelings going into the playoffs because at the end of last year, I said, I'm done. I don't believe him. I'm not watching another game. I'm over. And then this team, because they were winning and they were, remember the last 10 games to get first in division, they made me a believer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, am I really going to believe this? So I wrote a blog ahead of the playoffs on the psychotic disillusionment of a Leaf fan.
Which I thought was brilliant, by the way. CBS actually got wind of it.
CBC.
CBC.
CBS, if you want to, you can just go to my Medium blog, and I would be more than happy to do it.
I got a plug. CBC was a great interview, radio interview, and about the tribulations of a diehard Leaf fan. It was amazing.
And what we did was, after every game, I would just write my personal feelings of all the traumatics up and down that happened in every game. And it was just quite the experience. Anyway, because of that blog, we realized how many people, because it was read by so many people, and I got so many comments. It just made me realize how many people have the exact shared experiences that we have in terms of diehard Leaf fans. Obviously, realize how stupid and crazy it is to believe in this team, but we just don't. We keep going back with our rituals and beliefs. Like, think about that Illuminati hockey. As crazy as it was, I was like, yeah, he's right. 67, he's right. We just can't be wrong, right? Yeah. So, like a grown man in my 50s, falling and listening to these sort of Instagram posts and having those related in my article. So, I thought today would be a great topic just to talk about. The series is over. They lost in 7. And here we are, instead of the team taking responsibility, why they didn't show up for Game 7.
Yeah.
What do they do? The first thing they do, even the Florida Panthers, blame us. It's us crazy fans. We're too hard on that team. They've got too much pressure. What do you think of that stupid idea?
Well, let me just back up a second. So the trauma we felt and the elation that we felt is crazy. It's like mountain high, valley low. Every year, it's like a therapy session every year. But I have a philosophical question for you. Are we great fans because we stick with the Leafs, or are we stupid fans because we stick with the Leafs? Because I'm telling you, I don't know if I can do it anymore. It's been since I was born, but since '93, every year we get better and better. The 80s sucked, but then Shanahan took over, and I know he's gone now, and that needed to be done because he waited too long. But he really took us in the right direction to get here. But then they invested all their money in that core 4, and it hasn't panned out. And like you mentioned before, even Florida is in our heads. You look down the bench, and you see Marner freeze, and you see Nylander kind of doing what he does when he look at Nylander's a superstar. But he only plays when he wants to play. And I look at him and say, man, you could get 4 goals a game if you really wanted to. I know it's harder than that. But when it comes down to it, Dave, I want to get into your rituals because you kind of lead the way in that with us. But I don't think we should trade Mitch Marner. I think you have a different view on that. But I think trading Mitch Marner is like getting rid of Dave Keon at his peak. I think we should bring in, hopefully, if Mitch really wanted to be here, there was a true Leaf fan, which I think he is, he'd take a team friendly around 12 or 13 so that we could bring and surround him with people like Bennett's and those type of people. The Gary Roberts types, the Wendel Clark types, the Darcy Tucker types. I'd rather have 3 of those guys than a Nylander or Matthews. And
what you just said just illustrates the disillusionment of a Leaf fan. I want you to think of what you said. I want to keep Marner, and if he takes a hometown haircut, and blah, blah, blah. So we create these scenarios that would say, awesome, that we know aren't going to happen. But he's not going to take a hometown haircut.
That's a problem with Leaf fans. They think on the surface, you got to take a step back. I look at Detroit, and they went, how many years did they go?
You compared him to Dave Keon. At Dave Keon's peak, he won cups.
Look at the points he's got.
He won cups.
But look at the people who have
points. It's a different area. Like, it's different. If he had won a cup, I'd say, yeah, I agree with you.
Well, he could. They put the right people around him. But hold on a second. My point is, if you go back and you look at Steve Yzerman in Detroit, how long did Steve Yzerman go before they won a cup? But their fans didn't go fucking crazy. Excuse me.
They did go crazy. We forget. They went crazy too.
Yeah,
but they were patient,
and they waited, and they finally happened.
It wasn't over 10 years.
David, every time you get rid of a player, they go somewhere else and win a cup and do great.
But do you think I want you to think about it. Do you really think that a Marner is incomparable to a Steve Yzerman? Steve Yzerman, honestly, was, you know me about Steve Yzerman. To me, he's the greatest player that doesn't get the recognition.
Well, no, but I think
because he was when they were losing, he was like hard nosed, played his ass off. He had a shitty. So it's different. I'll tell you, it's miles different. When Steve Yzerman didn't win, they had a shitty team around him.
He wasn't as defensive.
His goaltending. They did not have the goaltending the Leafs had. Come on, they had shovel day when they played us.
That's good.
Yeah, but that's when they started winning. So that's my point. Yeah. Is once they started building around him, it was easy to become a winner because you had a leader that could lead that team. Mm-hmm.
Plus they had the best defenseman in the world, and then they brought guys in like shit.
Yeah, okay, so all I'm saying is the Leafs had talent all those years.
Yeah. If we had Shanahan on the ice instead of the head office, we would have won. That's the type of player we need. Anyway, bottom line is.
But we had O'Reilly. O'Reilly's that kind of player.
Well, to your point,
but he wasn't. But he wasn't the leader. The problem is that player has to be part of that core four.
Yeah.
And if you take that core four, the only person closest to that is Tavares, and they took the C away from him.
Yeah, but he's played better.
I get it, but he's the only one that comes close to that kind of DNA.
And to that point, we were talking earlier. They complain that there's so much abuse they get from the fans and the pressure. But I think people like Florida use it against us. They know they're in our heads. They're in our players' heads. You see it when they score in the third or the first period of the game 7, and you look down the bench and everybody's like in shock. And I'm like, guys, you're getting paid $14 million or 10 to 14, depending on who you are on the top core 4.
Unbelievable.
And it's like Pele comes out and goes, we got to change. And I'm looking, going, you got to change something. I'll tell you what the change, Mr. Pele, is, great that you got rid of Shanahan, but he did a good job up to this point to get us where we are. But hardworking guys like us, we pay. It takes $1,500 to get our family, or not even our family, to go with a buddy to get tickets and pay $19 for a beer. And we work hard and we look on the ice. And these guys making millions can't get up for a game 7, and they complain that's abuse. Holy shit! If you want to do something, how about not charge $19 for a beer this size when I can go home and buy a 12-pack for that? Why don't you give a discount to beers to the people that actually love hockey? And we've not even loved the Leafs, but we've loved them since the beginning. And you guys are making hand over fist money. And sometimes in the back of my head, I know you disagree with me on this, but sometimes I think it's all words, and it's not real, because at the end of the day, they're the richest franchise in Canada. What like if they didn't change anything, they're still going to make money. And why? How about Montreal? Why don't they panic like we do? They get just as much abuse.
There you go. That's my point. Is you can't blame the fans and say too much pressure, because other cities like Montreal, and I lived in Montreal, they have more coverage, English and French coverage on players, and it's the only sport on a daily basis. And guess what? They still won cups.
But
they're a horrible team right now, but they're rebuilding.
Yeah.
Rebuilding and rebuilding. Right now, they look like a more exciting team than ours.
They try hard.
Absolutely.
A couple years ago, they beat us.
I know. I'm talking about hard.
Anyway.
Well, listen. I'll tell you that I went to Game 3 in Florida. I had great seats, glass by the box. I paid $250 US. You know what? It was cheaper for me to fly to Florida and go to the game than to buy tickets to watch it.
And Gretzky was behind you.
And Gretzky was behind me in the box. It makes zero sense. It just makes no sense. But, and that goes back to the Leaf fans. And, I say it out here is,
I just thought
people make...
Hold on. Gretzky was in the 93 series that we lost.
He's the bad luck. I told you.
He's bad luck.
He is bad luck. Because he was in the Florida box, by the way, cheering them on.
I love Wiggers.
But listen, here's the thing about Leaf fans. Everyone loves to make fun of the Leaf fans. We're too hard. Our team's losers. Here's what people don't realize. We are the greatest fan group in hockey. You find me any other team that you can go to any city in North America, watch a game, and there is always a Leaf jersey or a group of people cheering on the fans, because we're diehard fans.
Yeah, down south, everybody's around the TV.
The fans in the stadium are not a reflection of the true fans, because a lot of it's corporate and suits and But in fairness, a lot of the fans in the playoffs were real fans. They did show up. They showed up. And at the end of the day, I told you this, because again, this podcast is being filmed a couple weeks after they lost, is Florida's destroying Carolina. One game, and Carolina is going to be probably knocked out tonight.
Yeah.
They destroyed Tampa. We'll probably be the toughest team they played. And in fact, in that game 3, if we just did not give up, we were in overtime. That game, if we won, for sure, psychologically, I think we would have. It was the nail into Florida's chest, right?
Yeah.
So in the end, we didn't do that bad compared to everyone. We faced the toughest team and took them to 7. The problem is how we showed up for Game 7.
Yeah.
It basically, the team gave all those naysayers, people who make fun of them, a reason to laugh, a reason to call them losers, even though they're not losers.
Yeah.
It's just, that's the heartbreak disappointment that every Leaf fan felt. We felt worse than the players. We felt like we were playing the game. That's how I felt.
Look, I feel bad. they take abuse, and like I know they're human beings too. But holy smokes, when you're making $11 million, at the end of the day, Marner and those guys can go to their Muskoka cottage and drown in their beer or whatever. But we have to go to work the next day, and when someone can't get up for Game 7, that's when I get pissed off of it. Anyway, they got to get over that. I personally, Dave, I don't think they should get rid of Marner. Like I said before, I think he's a Dave Keon in the making. They got to surround him. He's got to take the team-friendly contract, like I mentioned before, if he really loves Toronto, and then surround him with more Bennett's and players like that ilk, like Tuckers and Gary Roberts of the world, and if they ever make those kind of players anymore. But that's where Florida's winning. Their third line was killing us, right?
Yeah,
toughness, right?
That's a great point. Is that honestly, we own Florida. Their top line did nothing. You look at it, the Bennett, Kachuk line, they did nothing.
The Marchand line.
It was that fourth and third line. They destroyed us.
I know.
We couldn't deal with the hard-nosed, gritty players, but we could deal with the talented players. Yeah. It was interesting, right?
Yeah. And then guys like, what bothers me, though, is some of the third line, fourth line guys didn't show up. Like Pacioretty was amazing, right? Like, what do you think?
Listen, I love Pacioretty. I was the first to say, is he really going to have impact? He did. I told every
guy he recovered from 2 Achilles tendon tears.
We got to sign him. For sure. Yeah. That's a guy. I love it. For as an older athlete myself, I'm 55, still playing in some of the sports I do. I see a guy like that. He's playing elite sports at his age after injury, and he played with heart. Like that. Him and Tavares to me are the DNA of a core that people can learn from.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. And Tanev.
And Tanev. Those are to me are the core, and everyone should just be built around that DNA.
Yeah.
Obviously we need talent, don't get me wrong. But I think even, Matthews being the captain, like it's almost too much pressure. Yeah. Like think about it. The year before, he scored 60, no problem.
Yeah. Well, look how Tavares is shone this year after the captaincy was taken away. Like, look, it's legit. There's a lot of pressure, but at the end of the day, you got to figure that out because you're making millions of dollars. So it doesn't suck it up, buttercup is, I guess, the term for players. And one thing I struggle with is how come teams like Florida can run over our goalie, knock them out of the series. They can, 2 bunny punches every time they hit somebody, and they get away with it. We're getting better at it, but we need players that can get away with that kind of stuff.
Wow, listen, Florida's smart. In that Game 7, they knew those refs weren't calling any penalties,
right?
And they went at it. And we just did not know how to react. So when you say, how does Florida get away with it? Well, you blame the Leafs. The Leafs did nothing about it. They really did nothing. Like in our day, when I say our day, when we were watching the 90s, even in the 70s, anyone came close to doing that.
Yeah.
Someone was getting their head kicked out. Like whether it was Tiger Williams or it was Wendel Clark, you just weren't going to get away with it.
Yeah.
Right? And that just doesn't exist today.
It doesn't have to be said.
Even defense, like we say, Tanev, he's unbelievable. And he is. He's blocking shots. But that was like norm. Think about it. Boris Salmi, he took that skate across his face. He blocked shots. Plus, he played. So he was Riley and Tanev molded together.
I know.
Right? We don't have that anymore. Like the only guy I'd say is he really was Benoit.
Yeah.
He learned from Tanev, but he was trying to push up the play. Like so, there are bright spots like the Pacioretty, the Benoit. Yeah. Those are the things that emerge that you just weren't expected. That like, fuck, these guys are pretty good, right? Like they're and obviously us losing our starting goalie didn't help. Even though we touted we had 2 great goalies.
Yeah,
they weren't. One was better than the other.
I think 2 things. They got to figure out their salary cap situation and get the good players in a good situation under the cap so that we can surround the good players with gritty guys that can step up. But man, we got to invest in some psychologists because they got to get over this. If they don't change, we got to get over it. We got to, guys, it's a privilege to make millions of dollars to play for the Leafs. Don't complain. And it's funny. Florida, everybody thinks Paul Maurice is such a great guy. He's so in the minds of the players, and he says these things because he knows he's in their mind, and he just adds a little bit of a poke. And he's brilliant. I love him. But
isn't it funny when he was in Toronto? They said this is not a good coach.
Yeah,
and even in Winnipeg, they let him go, and now he's a Stanley Cup champion.
That's my point. Why we should get rid of Marner because every player that gets traded from here goes and wins a cup, or at least does really well. Do not get rid of Marner.
But that's part of my point. Is that
you know what? He's going to go to Florida.
Yeah, but my point is, it's not fair to Marner to stay here because here is an environment that he can't flourish. The pressure. I know you say you should be able to deal with it, but he can't.
No, but you
send him somewhere else.
No.
Let me finish.
Okay.
You send him somewhere else. Yeah, he may win a cup because he'll flourish somewhere else. We need to get the right person who can play in this environment.
Yeah, he's younger than us, but I think he loves Toronto, and I think he doesn't want to go out this way. And I think if he's made tons of money, if he went to them and said, look, I'll take 12 or 13 instead of the 14, 15 he wants, people would love him forever, and then take that money and surround him with another Bennett, or nobody touches Marner, and that's the way it should be. But if he goes, then I'm going to lose respect, because it's just about money. It's not about the love of the team, and I think that's where we got away from it.
Well, then be ready to be disappointed, because he already declined an offer.
Well,
right. So, and he's already says he wants to look at offers, and there's no doubt he is talented. There's no way New York is not going to make an offer for him.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lineup of teams. So, the question is, it's only worth it to the Leafs if he's willing to sign with a no trade clause.
Yeah.
So we can get some value for him, or he stays.
Yeah.
He's not going to do that. You can't blame him.
Yeah. Yeah. I just we need more grit. There's a team toughness that we don't have. It's getting better. But Florida, man, they get in your face and they get away with it. We need.
Well, what Florida proves, what Florida's proved is that. So, and I go back to this: the Leafs invested in the concept with Dubas and all that. That hey, we're going to play around. We're going to out talent the other teams, and they did. If you look at the Leafs, they have the deepest talent pool from NHL down in terms of they drafted every talent.
Offense.
Yeah, right. So that's the thing. What they didn't realize is that isn't the new system. Florida proved that end-to-end hockey, tough hockey, wins cups. Yeah. In fact, you're seeing it in Edmonton.
They play it anyway.
You see it in Edmonton. Yeah. You've got two of the most talented players in the NHL, but everyone else is not the most talented. But that is a fucking. They learned last year when they lost to Florida last year.
Yeah.
They learned in that series. They went from 3-1 to tie it because they learned how to play against Florida, which is tough end-to-end hockey.
Yeah.
And it's the DNA in there this year. You're going to see Florida and Edmonton in the finals again, and those are two hard-nosed end-to-end teams.
I had a thought
at least have to build their team like that.
Yes, and look at McDavid in that last year, getting the team riled up. He carried him on his back, and he's doing it.
So let me ask you: you remember that Amazon series?
Yeah.
David, he's freaking out, and if you're a player on that team, the greatest player in the world is freaking out on you.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah. That's my point.
Do you tell me? Do you think Matthews was freaking out in the dressing room?
No. I think it was.
That's my point. Well, so let's go to Florida.
I think personally, Dave. Hold on a second. I think personally, Marner and Matthews Justin Bieber was sitting behind them.
Well, I don't even want to bring that up.
They were thinking about where they were going to party afterwards. Wendel Clark, Ty Domi, all those guys.
That's Leaf management. We just said, why aren't they just putting pressure by putting the alumni behind the fucking
Gary Roberts behind them.
Hey, Leaf management, isn't that a great idea? Put the alumni right behind the bench so they can see it.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Instead, I see these crazy fans in suits drinking wine and Bieber with his girlfriend. Does that make any sense?
Okay.
Does that make any sense to you?
I have a crazy thought today. I was driving home and I was like, it's very interesting that Pelly got rid of Shanahan, but he's not replacing him. And then I thought, isn't it interesting that McDavid's contract is coming up in a year?
Yeah.
Right? And there's rumors out there that he wants to win a cup with the Leafs. So if he wins the cup, there's nothing else to do in Edmonton.
It's a rumor that Toronto fans have started.
Probably. But listen to this.
Everyone wants to come to Toronto.
Hold on. Think about this. Why would he not bring in another president? It's not about money. They make too much money. But when Edmonton put McDavid over there, the new president of Edmonton is McDavid's agent, right?
Yeah.
Coincidence that he's not filling the president role in Toronto and that the contract comes out?
That's a dandy idea if I ever heard one. That's good. I never knew that. That's a good one.
Just a rumor, but could it be possible that he's making way for that and said, okay, if he comes over, you can have the president's job. He's here and you can have Matthews and Marner and whoever.
If this is true, we got a hot topic here. That's a dandy
anyway, just came into my
That's
today.
A dandy idea.
That's the hockey gods, baby.
That would work for me. For
anyway,
sure.
Probably never happened. But anyway, this is the psychological thinking of a Leaf fan, grasping for something, and it never comes true. But please, God.
See, but if you say that, if they're going to do that, they should trade Matthews because they have him under contract.
Well, they have to
get a boatload of players and then keep Marner because That would be the guy he plays with.
Yeah, exactly. Or
Right.
Hyman, get him back. But
Yeah.
That's the worst trade of all time. But he's not worth $5 million. Holy smokes! Anyway.
Well, now he's out.
Yeah.
Or we're giving it away. Yeah.
Anyway, so next podcast, why don't you talk about how we came about this idea? I know you touched on it a bit.
Yeah, so listen, this is just me and him. We get together all the time and we chat about every topic. And most of the topics are usually about parenting. And here's a guy who's raised 3 kids, 2 daughters, right? You call him a saint and a son. But I've had 3 daughters, so I'm the true saint. I've got a guaranteed spot in heaven. But, this is something we do constantly. And sometimes we can get into large rants, even funny rants that become inappropriate. We thought this is something we'd love to share. And again, for those of you that want to put comments, if they're nasty, I'll troll you. If they're not, they might be topics that we'd love to discuss, because I'm sure every dad out there in our age group, in our mid-50s, probably love discussing the same topics.
Yeah.
Family, sports.
Yeah, our kids don't listen to us, so at least we have
at least
a
you listen. All right, our kids don't want to listen to us. We want to at least tell someone and give them our knowledge, and it's going to be you out there. So again, we want to welcome you to our first inaugural podcast of Pints to Pasta, the Dad Chronicles, and I hope you join us for future episodes. Andrew, great choice on the pint, by the way.
And that's the ultimate dandy idea.
Love it. Cheers.
See you later.